Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Steph Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another edition of Fictional Women Around the World, segment. And this one was a listener suggestion, so thanks as always for your suggestions. We do take them into account, and we very much enjoy getting them. Today we're talking about Rebecca Welton from the critically acclaimed Apple Plus sports comedy show, Ted Lasso, which I recently just watched all of them in a whirlwind day. And I loved it. There are going to be some broad strokes of the show and plotline. So if you haven't seen it yet and don't want to be spoiled, come back to this one later. It's going to be fairly unspoilery, but still spoilery. So just a note.
It probably is spoilery. Just go ahead and assume that. So Rebecca Welton, formerly Rebecca Mannion, is played by Hannah Waddingham, who, if you're not familiar, she was the priest mother in Game of Thrones that did Shame.
I know, I did not know
that to the end of the first season. I was like, what? That was her?
Uh-huh.
But you should know this. So the show starts literally the very first scene with Rebecca going through a really hard divorce after she finds out that her husband, Rupert Mannion, was having affairs that were printed in the tabloids. And Rupert Mannion is played by Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, really?
Did you not notice this?
I didn't know that. No, I didn't notice it. Wow.
I'm pretty sure you have face blindness. I'm very concerned. I'm just kidding. No. But yeah, so that's why I'm like, oh God, he's such a bad character, but I loved him in Buffy. Why? So she takes control over the football team, aka the soccer team, which was originally owned by her husband, and he loved it. It was his life. It is AFC Richmond, and she knew he loved it and was glad to take it in the divorce.
Oh yes, because he loved this team so much, she was determined to run it into the ground as the new owner. So as part of this, she hires Ted Lasso, an North American football coach who knows nothing about soccer/football. And this action infuriates the fan base to Rebecca's absolute vindictive delight. But Ted is like so kind, and he sort of is impervious to Rebecca's attempts to rebuff his attempts at friendship. And he's like wearing her down with his biscuits with the boss. She's determined to hate him, and he's determined to not let that get in the way.
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
So this doesn't happen all at once, though Rebecca tries to tarnish Ted's reputation by publishing pictures of him with Keeley, who is also another fantastic character, a model and the girlfriend of star AFC Richmond player Jamie Tart. But the picture doesn't get published.
Nope. Throughout the show, we see Rebecca healing and struggling with her divorce, and we see how that ripples out into her friendships. As part of her new duties, Rebecca is expected to host the 10th annual benefit for underprivileged children, something she's like really nervous about, has never done before. It's actually one of my favorite scenes, I think, is when Rebecca reveals to Keeley she's really nervous about being on the red carpet and speaking. Yes. And Keeley gives her like this advice. It's like, oh, you've got it. Here's how you do it. I loved it. So this event gets worse when her ex, Rupert, shows up and kind of takes over. Rebecca confides in Ted about how she can only see this side. She's the only one that can see this side of Rupert. And then tells Keeley that people must be held accountable for their actions, which leads Keeley to break it off with Jamie and go out for a drink with Rebecca instead. And Keeley had previously told Rebecca that she respects her and is intimidated by her. Yeah, I love that whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And from there, Keeley and Rebecca's friendship grows. It's beautiful. I love it. With Rebecca taking Keeley under her wing, they go on a work trip together, and Rebecca introduces Keeley to her good friend, Flo/Sassy. Love her as well. And we meet her daughter later on, by the way.
Yes.
Later that night, Sassy volunteers Rebecca for karaoke, and she sings Let It Go from Frozen. BT dubs. She kills it. And has an amazing voice, just in case. Yes. Ted has a panic attack about his divorce with his wife during the performance. Rebecca comforts him. Ted later texts her thanking her. And then Rebecca has a one-night stand, but not with Ted. And Ted also has a one-night stand.
Yes, he does. But we do get to continue to see a supportive friendship blossom between Ted and Rebecca. When Rebecca's nervous about meeting some shareholders called the Milk Sisters, she asks Ted to come along for moral support to this meeting. The pair arrive only to find Rupert is there with a young woman he is now dating named Bex. And Bex bought out the shares of the Milk Sisters as part of Rupert's plan to regain some control over the team. Angry on Rebecca's behalf, Ted challenges Rupert to darts with the stipulation that if Ted wins, Rupert cannot join Rebecca in the owner's box, and Ted wins, and it's very satisfying. It's very, very satisfying.
It does feel good.
Yes. Rebecca still sometimes puts getting back at Rupert over what's best for the team, eventually causing her longtime assistant Higgins to quit. Keeley finds out that Rebecca was behind the paparazzi photos of her and Ted and confronts her, demanding that she tell Ted the truth, which Rebecca eventually does. Ted, of course, forgives her. Later, she finds Ted on Christmas and spends the day with him, handing out gifts to children in need, not wanting him to be alone the first Christmas after his divorce. It's very, very sweet.
Yes, the relationship is real sweet. And by the way, in this whole time, there is a dating site that happens.
Yes.
I think it's during the Christmas episode that we find out that Rebecca is talking to somebody, and so is Ted. I was so confused. I want to put that out there.
Yes. A lot of people were, I think.
There were so many back and forth. I was like, what? Anyway, so because that wasn't obvious, are they going to get together? Is this who they're going to hook each other up with?
Yes.
What's happening? And I think they've done a really good job in maintaining that as a friendship. I love that.
Yeah.
So we get to see Rebecca successfully bond with her goddaughter, Nora, who is hilarious and sassy as hell. So probably appropriate that it's Sassy's daughter. The two had a close relationship when Nora was younger, but after Rebecca kind of disappeared, kind of faded. And Rebecca offered and excited Nora the chance to shadow her at work after doing some mea culpas. And with Nora's help, she refuses to fire the player who wouldn't wear Dubai Air as a sponsor due to their track record in his home country. BT Dubs, I had to look up if it was real. It is not. Dubai Air is not a real company because I really thought it was. I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah, it is not, because that was one of the number one questions. Two, the player, Sam, was in a commercial with Dubai Air, and he asked to pull out of it after his dad was like, oh, no. Do you not know how it's happening in your home?
Right. Yeah. So yes, meanwhile, Keeley is helping Rebecca get back into dating using this new app called Banter that Keeley is promoting. And Rebecca has a few matches, but she meets one she's really excited about. She learns later it was one of the players, though she knows there are all these reasons they shouldn't see each other. She's his boss. She's older. They do go through with it anyway. That's kind of where it ends. By the end of the second season, which there are only 2 out right now, she has really grown and become one of the team's top supporters. So there are a couple of things that are interesting about this character in terms of portrayals of women in positions of power. For one, though she's technically the antagonist, or she starts as the antagonist anyway, it's hard to hate her. We can see where she's coming from and empathize with her. It's rewarding to see her get revenge against her husband. We want her to get revenge against her husband, even if that is not fitting with our also want of Ted Lasso to do well and the team to do well. We see her character arc and growth, especially through her friendship with Ted, which I also find very refreshing that it's a platonic friendship between these two. She goes from using Ted like a pawn, uncaring of what that means for him, to apologizing to him and hugging him. After Higgins quits, she seeks him out and sincerely asks him to come back. She apologizes to her best friend for letting her marriage drive their friendship apart, drive this wedge in their friendship. We see Rebecca making these amends, even though she struggles with desire for revenge. In the end, she chooses justice, to live a better life and move forward. And that's, that's what they say, isn't it? A life well lived is the best revenge. Something like that. Another thing is, Rebecca is a fully fleshed out character. While she looks the part of the ice queen or your stereotypical power boss, she is layered. In some moments, she shows vulnerability, caring, doubt, all these different sides of her. She has friends and family. She has a career and a life, which is very rare. We get to see a woman having both. While she does have all of this pain from the divorce, we get to see her struggle with that. We also get to see her heal too and have these healing moments.
Mm-hmm. And another thing is we do get to see Rebecca's supportive friendships with other women. I think every time I would watch the show, because I was always suspicious of motives of like the shows, it was genuinely refreshing to see these relationships. Her and Keely, who are two very different people who come from very different walks of life, give each other great advice and really help build each other up. They don't compete with each other. They don't compete with other women. It's lovely. And I also really do love seeing her relationship with her mom. Like there was a giant breakdown. And I think we can all relate to not wanting to be exactly like our moms and seeing the faults and praying that we're not like that. And for Rebecca, she actually goes through a moment of like, I'm being like my mother and I don't want this, because we find out during her father's funeral so many bad things. And we've already been introduced to her because she was threatening to leave him because he was being inappropriate or I think having affairs. I don't know what he was doing, but apparently he's an ass. And that's how it's built up. And the mom, and she's been wanting her mom to get out, but it doesn't happen. And then their like real breakdown of their relationship and having a real conversation about that, how that impacted their life. I thought that was a really genuinely nice moment too.
Yeah. I think it's nice. That's one of the things that I think is really resonating with people about the show, which is it does feel like just a nice representation of somebody who you think is going to be the villain. And instead you're kind of like, oh no, I see. And you do have all of this growth and you see all of this kindness. And I love seeing these relationships between women that just feel very real and really thought out and very, very supportive. I love it. And we do also get to see online dating as an older woman and what that's like for her. I think that's pretty rare as well in our media landscape. So yeah, just all around, recommend it. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would say go do it.
There it is.
There it is. And in the meantime, we always love getting suggestions from you, listeners. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Instagram at Stuff Mom Never Told You or on Twitter at MomStuffPodcast. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.